welcome back, everyone. I'm Kevin Long, and welcome back to the Plano Independent School District Sports Network. As we were saying, the judge, John Payton, and usually riding shotgun with us, but the judge still recovering from eye surgery. He'll be back shortly enough. But in the meantime, we're going to continue talking to former coaches and athletic directors here in Plano. And I guess the gentleman to my right doesn't need too much of an introduction. Coach Tom Kimbrough has been around for a few years here in Plano. Coach, always good to see you.
Thank you, Kevin. It's good to be here.
You know, we were talking about the fact that Coach Clark hired you here. And then, of course, you went and you taught biology for a number of years. First off, can you remember much about those days teaching biology? In other words, lesson planning about things like cells and Golgi bodies and the top row of the periodic chart elements, all that kind of stuff?
You know, I can't remember a whole lot because that was probably over 35 or 36 years ago when I stopped teaching. But I can a little bit.
Do you miss those days at all?
Not the teaching.
Just
I miss teaching football. But probably, to tell you the truth, the teaching part was the price that had to be paid to allow you to coach, because I was a coach. And I tried to do a good job, and I tried to do the best I could, but my heart really was with athletics. And so as I became a head coach, you know, at that point you stopped teaching classes, at least here in Plano. And at the same time, I had a lot of great kids in class, whether it was athletics or whether it was a regular biology class. And I certainly miss those people, but my heart was in athletics and was in coaching.
And we certainly cannot blame for that. You know, Coach Clark said something kind of interesting. You know, when I was asking him the same thing about, you know, missing this or missing that, he said it's just about this simple. When he took over as athletic director, there was all kinds of growth in Plano. For example, when he started, there's 500 kids in the school. Now you've got 3 high schools that all graduate, well over 1,000 each year. Was it pretty much the same way for you when you took over as athletic director, from the standpoint every year you're probably thinking about opening another school here or there, be it a junior high, an elementary school, a high school. Every year you've got to get the appropriate facilities, the coaches, that kind of, the so to speak, personnel. In other words, there's a lot to do.
Well, there was a lot to do, Kevin. And when I started in 1968, we had one middle school. That was Bowman. And now, of course, there's 12 or 13 middle schools. I was the first. I opened the building for Bowman in 1968. Actually, I was coaching. Our practices actually were at Cox. It became the administration building and still used as a support building. The kids would hop on their bicycle from Bowman and ride over after school and practice football. Though at the time it wasn't there wasn't a concrete pad in the back. It was just all grass. And so that's the way I started. I started off teaching 7th grade science at Cox. All of the 7th graders were at Cox in 1968. The 8th graders were at Bowman. The next year it became a 7th and an 8th grade.
Coach, you've had some epic battles in those times. Do you ever get many people in the Plano area running around talking about the year you did this or the year you did that? And when you do, what's your general reaction?
Well, I'm always glad to talk about it and I always appreciate them, bringing it up. It seems like about every other person I talked to saw the Highland Park game.
Yeah.
If that's the case, we held about 300,000 people.
You know what you're telling me? How many people? There was once an article written about all the people who said they served with John Kennedy in the Navy after he became president, of course. And of course, if that were the case, half the Pacific would have served with him. But go ahead, Coach.
Well, most of them, or at least half of them, say they left at halftime and then started listening to it on the radio, and then so they came back in. So that was one that was really unusual.
Well, I'll tell you what, I can say this, and I've got newspaper clippings to prove it. One of your, I always said the best high school football game I ever saw was Plano taking on Temple in '78. And a game you guys came from behind and beat them 15-14. And, of course, keep in mind, I'm growing up in the East. I had never seen big-time high school football. I had never seen 30,000 people at a football game. I had never seen high school football played in, shall we say, Texas Stadium. I had never seen bands that had 150, 200 people. I had never seen drill teams that had 80, 100 girls that all, perfect choreography. And so it was a real eye-opener for me. But, Coach, can you remember much about that Temple game?
I can remember one of the last plays, the final. We scored our last touchdown with just seconds left, if I remember right, Kevin, and we ran a little outside veer loaded play because we had to go for two. It was 14-13, so we couldn't kick an extra point because we were behind either in first downs or penetration.
You were behind both, Coach. You were
behind
both because I was keeping stats.
So we ran a veer loaded play, and little Steve Elmer ran. I still remember him going to the left and getting in and getting us ahead 15-14. There wasn't much time left. The play that I really remember, though, was Temple didn't quit. They got the ball, they came back, and they tried a long field goal with just no time.
56-yarder.
Yes, and I didn't think they had a chance, but as they kicked it, it just kept going, and I still remember my manager, who was sitting down under the goalpost. He was down there, and of all things, he threw his hands up like it's good. I didn't know it was him. But really what he was saying, it's great, he didn't make it. So that, for some reason, stands out to this day, that I thought they actually made that field goal.
You're mentioning a really funny story. When I worked in Oklahoma, I worked in Oklahoma City for a year. I can't even remember who the play-by-play guy was for the Sooners, but this would have been in the 70s when Barry Switzer was there. They were playing somebody, and I think it was Missouri. Missouri was trying a field goal at the end, and the kick went up, and the announcer, it was no good. Of course, to him, it was good.
Right.
And he's yelling in the microphone, and it's good,
right.
It's good, the Sooners are going to win. Right. So I can see how you get a little misdirected there. Now, of course, there are things that I'll always remember there. One, it's the first time I had the opportunity to interview you, and it's the first time I had the awareness of who Billy Ray Smith was, who went on to an incredible career. And the thing I remember was how incredibly poised and what an incredibly nice young guy he was at age 18.
Mm-hmm. He was an outstanding athlete. The thing that most people don't realize, and Billy Ray only weighed that year possibly less than, I guess that was his senior year. He was about 2'5", and then he kept just getting bigger and bigger, and he was an outstanding high school player, and obviously was an outstanding college and pro player as well. Great kid. I still talk to him from time to time.
Can you remember this play, Coach? And this is another one of my definitive memories. Temple had a great running back named Carl Robinson who signed with the University of Texas. Mm-hmm. Carl broke loose on about a 25-yard run, and it would look like he was going to go all the way. Billy Ray ran him out of bounds and, of course, kind of body slammed him. Now, it wasn't illegal because they were going out of bounds. He made the hit inbounds, but then kind of body slammed him. And Carl got up and he threw the ball at Billy Ray, and that got him a 15-point penalty, which might have been the real turn in the game because they were within field goal range at that. When they got 15 yards, all of a sudden, they're back out of field goal range, and they didn't score.
Right. I don't remember it. I'm just glad Billy Ray didn't throw it back.
Well, he didn't. But, of course, my I guess, all-time great quote for Billy Ray was when I had you both on the air last year, and I asked about the Highland Park game when you were down 28-0 at halftime. And he said, we never doubted we could come back. And you turned around and said, Billy Ray, I wish you'd told me that at the time.
Yeah, that's right. We were actually behind 21-0 at halftime, and I always tell the story that I gave a great halftime speech and came back out, and they just drove down, scored again. It was 28-0 actually in the third quarter, and at that point, that's when I stopped giving those great halftime speeches.
No more of them. Tell you what, why don't we take this time out real quickly, and we'll be back with more with Coach Tom Kimbrough right after this. You're listening to the Plano Independent School District Sports Network. Welcome back to the Plano Independent School District Sports Network. We're just going to finish up with Coach Tom Kimbrough here. Now, Coach, we've been through a few things in your career. What do you enjoy doing now, Coach? I know I see you every Friday night out there, so obviously you still like football.
Well, I'm still with the district. I'm working part-time at this point, but I work with facilities, and I really enjoy it. And I enjoy, we'll go in and either build a new school or we'll renovate. And I really get into that. I really take a lot of pride into it. I don't know how much I contribute, but I know that I enjoy it. And that's that's the main thing that I'm doing now.
Do you enjoy going to Friday night football games?
I do. I can't say, a lot of coaches say that they really enjoyed the Friday nights, and I didn't always feel that way. I enjoyed the non-district game because there's no pressure. Mm-hmm. I enjoyed the playoffs because you knew you had a successful season if you were in the playoff games. But in district, I can't say that I really enjoyed Friday night until either we had it put away or until I knew that we had clinched district, that we had made a playoff.
What about this, Coach? The way they play football these days is obviously a little bit different than when you were coaching. I mean, football has become almost a game of ultimate frisbee, where about every down they're in a shotgun. They got a lot of times empty backfield, the twins left, trips right, that kind of stuff. Stuff that, in your day you didn't see all that much.
Well, actually, we were beginning to see it, and at the same time, I've been out now for 20 years. So obviously there's been a lot of change, but we were seeing the run and shoot, the passing game. I really don't care for it. To me, it's like watching 7-on-7 or like watching flag football, pass and touch. I like a mixture, of the run and the pass. But whenever you're just throwing every down, to me it gets old. But obviously it's working for people, and I'm sure a lot of people enjoy it.
What kind of thoughts go through your mind when you see somebody like, and I'm just using this as an example here, Jadon McCullough, who I'm sure you've known since he's been in junior high, if not more grade school. He's thrust into a very, very vital role here in the Plano ISD, being the head football coach, Plano, and you see him going through the same kind of pressures you went through, all those years ago. What kind of thoughts go through your mind when you see Jadon doing that kind of stuff?
Well, of course, I know it's hard on him whenever he's had a lot of just close games this year, and sometimes they fall for you the right way and sometimes they don't. And this year, unfortunately, they haven't. But I know he was an outstanding player for me and just gave everything he had. And I know he's doing the same thing as far as a coach. He'll prepare, and I know the kids have respect for him, and I think he's doing a good job. And but sometimes that ball just has to bounce right for you.
And sometimes you just don't get the breaks. For example, Coach, we were talking about this, among other things, with Coach Clark. Plano, for example, this year, as well as East and West, it's just almost unbelievable. Allen is probably going to have a great playoff run, as they always do. Yet Allen should have lost to Plano East. Certainly could have lost to Plano East. Marcus is probably going to have a great playoff run, and they probably should have lost to Plano. In other words, sometimes things just don't go quite right.
Well, it depends. In playoffs, it depends not only on how good a team you have, but who you hit, the luck of the draw. There have been times that maybe we got knocked out midway through the playoffs, and we just happened to hit the super team along the way. There's been years that I didn't get out of district, and I might have had a team that was capable of beating other teams that won state championships. So you just can't tell, but it's not your team as much, or it is your team, but it's also who you're facing.
Injuries, tired
Well,
feet,
that's true, too.
Tired minds, all those things playing there. All right, Coach, it's always great to see you. Thanks for taking the time to visit with us, and we hope to be seeing you a lot more on Friday nights, or for a lot more. Well, I see you every Friday night, but what I guess I'm getting for a lot more to come.
Well, thank you, Kevin.
Okay, all right. Good to see you, Coach. All right, that'll do it for this week. Once again, I'm Kevin Long. You've been watching the Plano Independent School District Sports Network. Have a good evening, everyone.